for Learning Innovation, and the document itself came out underneath under my umbrella, and it was led by Dr. Alvin and Dr. Foley, and so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brendan Elbon. I'm the Director of the Office of STEM and Innovation. We oversee many different subject areas, but a lot of what we do is technology, virtual learning, and supporting schools and teachers during this time.
Hi, I'm Dr. Meg Foley, and I'm the Coordinator of Virtual Learning. And so in the Office of STEM and Innovation under the Department of Learning and Innovation. And so as Michael has indicated, we worked boots on the ground work with the development of the digital devices in response to legislation.
Reggie?
Hi, Reggie Fox, Virtual Learning Specialist and in the Department of Instruction.
Great, thank you all very much. And actually, I just wanted to also say we were really excited to learn that Virginia is one of the first few states, at least to our knowledge, that's created digital device health and safety guidelines. So, you know, we first want to commend you for your work, and we feel like Virginia as a whole has been leading and been on the tip of the spear as far as innovation and education. And so we're just, you know, we just want to say thank you for the work that you've done on this. And over the past several months, we met with Superintendent Dr. Doherty and a former student of yours, actually, Mr. Bowling, Dr. Tillman in Chesterfield County regarding RFR mitigation in the classroom. But really, we feel this is a conversation that needed to happen at the state level, considering this is where the digital device guidelines were where they were created. Because a lot of the things that Dr. Tillman and us spoke about, it kind of pointed back to you guys. So we figured that maybe we could have a conversation with you regarding mitigation of RFR and including RFR in the guidelines. So that's why we requested this meeting with you today. So let's go ahead. Mary, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Mary Bauer. I'm going to be addressing the RFR bioeffects from the wireless digital devices. And I've gone through the digital device guideline document several times in detail, and I had some questions about the material. So Mr. Bowling, I guess this question is directed to you. Do you feel that VDOE has a duty of care to physically protect the children while they're attending school under loco parentis?
Yes, of course.
Okay, that's a pretty general question. So in the digital device guideline, the RFR bioeffects, which are vast, was entirely left out of that document. And we were just wondering if you could provide the baseline of why that was omitted.
Well, so I didn't sit on every committee. However, what I will say is that we assembled a committee of experts. They came from the health and education fields and went through the process. We had and actually included a town hall, so a posting. So opened it up for public comment, received some public comments, and actually ended up making a slight adjustment or two based on public comments. And so, you know, went through the process based on our review and the experts that were on the panel. To my knowledge, I wasn't in every meeting. It didn't come up, but that doesn't mean that we can't hear your feedback and consider something.
Okay, thank you. So what information then is currently being relied upon by VDOE with respect to the classroom and RFR to determine that the children are safe when they're using their digital devices? When I say RFR, excuse me, that means radio frequency radiation. I always use that acronym and I don't realize not everybody's familiar with it.
You're going to have to restate that question.
So every laptop has a Wi-Fi antenna in the display and it radiates radiation, specifically non-ionizing radiation, not like ionizing radiation like gamma nuclear. This is considered non-ionizing. There's a safety threshold that FCC, publishes in the Code of Federal Regulations. And we want to know, in relationship to the statutes that are out there, what is the school system specifically doing with respect to the digital devices that are used in the classroom to determine that the children are safe while they're using their devices that are radiating non-ionizing radiation?
Well, as I said, the committee itself did not, well, to my knowledge, didn't discuss this specific issue. However, I'm sure that there are protocols and parameters that are set by tech industry for acceptable levels. And if that's not the case, I see some head shaking, then I would hope that groups like yours would advocate for such safety levels. But we were not made aware of any of those concerns, to my knowledge. And Meg, did RFR come up?
No, not to my knowledge at all did RFR come up. However, I will say this too, that the legislation was a little bit more targeted. And so in response to legislation, we responded to what it called for. And so it's not exclusionary of RFR. We weren't trying to leave that out, but what we
Right.
tried to do was address the legislation and the guidelines. And so make the guidelines manageable for school divisions and also address the legislation and what it called for.
So actually, there was a nurse who had a lot of other credentials besides RN, BSN, who did put in town hall comment and had enumerated what the biological effects were from screen time. And when I went through them, I was pretty amazed that there was about a 90% overlap between screen time whole body effects from head to toe and what a child might experience from radio frequency radiation. So those comments, in effect, whether they were from one point source or another, were actually submitted, and they were also omitted from the digital device guideline. These are not like I get a headache or I get an upset stomach. I mean, it was really very strong comments based on neurological, brain structure issues, psychological issues, depression. I mean, it's pretty extensive. So, you know, I could provide that information after the, you know, the meeting here to you, but I want to show you a pictorial. Jenny, if you could put up Paul's website with the Wi-Fi in the classroom there, and you'll see these FCC threshold levels are being exceeded when the math is done according to OSHA. Now, I understand you're all STEM virtual learning people, so maybe you might enjoy looking at this math. It's all enumerated on this web link, this page that's coming up here. This was an actual case out in California. So you see two classrooms there, the two larger circles kind of in the center of those rooms are the teachers, and there's 4 tables of 6 children. This is a kindergarten class that are around these this configuration, and the Wi-Fi emitter is there at the top center and it's radiating. And to the right, you see dates, October 25th, October 26th, and it will continue to fill it in these boxes. One red square is the FCC limit. Now, this is a calculation done by OSHA. And you'll see that if you're doing the calculation according to how OSHA tells you, who is the agency that would be called in for this type of problem, you're well over the limit just with that one emitter. So, you know, these kids are getting radiated, and if it's screen time, the Wi-Fi antenna, at least in my HP laptop, is in the upper right-hand corner of the display. The radiation coming from that little circular 1-inch antenna goes right into their eye. So they have eye problems with the radiation from the antenna and also from the blue light. And there's nothing in these guidelines about protecting their eyes. I think that's the one part of the children's body, according to how far up their torso sits from the seat, that really may be getting damaged. And I understand that you have ed tech software on these laptops that track their eyes. So it's constantly poking at their eyeballs. So at a minimum, you know, when there's no instructional video streaming, you should have a camera closure device on there that cuts off that streaming. But this is just like, you know, one little piece part of this. I don't want to waste too much of your time because I know we're running late, but Jenny, if you could take that off and put up the lawyer's letter. So this is a letter that was put together by a committee, Lawyers Committee on Wireless Radiation and Children's Health. There's a consortium of 8 different law firms there, or 7. Anyhow, they've put together the duties of the school, what should be taking place. And if you could scroll to that page there, I think it's page 3. Page 3. Yeah, so these are all your duties. Once you pass the point of not knowing to actually knowing, which this video is doing for you, it's foreseeable risk and preventable harm. And that's the first duty there, duty of heightened vigilance and precaution. The duty to be informed and to inform and to warn parents, the duty to secure informed consent, duty to secure certification of safety, get an RF engineer out there and start surveying and start disclosing to parents what the harms are with these devices. And also, because you have this in your curriculum, and it would probably be very hard to take them out altogether, but you have to start reducing time until you get these mitigation measures in place. And when they use them, they're not being exposed to things that can damage them. And I think the only one I didn't talk about there is ADA accommodation, which means that if a person is electrohypersensitive, like Anastasia had mentioned, and I am as well, I have to say from my perspective, I've never used the laptop. I always use a desktop because it has more power to it, but I switched about a month ago. And what I'm realizing is the camera is very damaging to my eyes and also around the abdomen. That's where I'm getting most of my exposure because that's where the fiber optic cable is hooked into the computer and is probably the highest source of emissions. So these are not places that you would think would be problematic, but the shielding to the abdominal part of the body, at least for an adult, is an issue. So, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. I'm going to transfer over to Dr. Patty Powers and let her address the bioeffects. She's the medical expert here, so you can hear it firsthand from her. Dr. Patty? Do we have Dr. Patty there?
Yes, Dr. Patty, there you are. You have to unmute.
There we go. Sorry. One of the huge problems with this wireless radiation is its impact on voltage-gated calcium channels in the body. And these are calcium channels that allow calcium influx into the cell that are sensitive to voltage. When you increase the amount of intracellular calcium, that's an excitatory stimulus, and it creates via a pathway called the peroxynitrate pathway, increased free radicals or increased reactive oxidative species. And oxidation is a normal process, but it must be kept in balance. When under the influence of Wi-Fi, especially hour after hour and day after day, it sets off an imbalance. So you have more oxidation than you have antioxidation. And that is linked to every chronic disease we know. Specifically in kids, we see cognitive effects, anxiety. Anxiety is a huge problem these days, depression, focus issues, cognitive issues such as ADD and ADHD. We see poor sleep because these kids are exposed to Wi-Fi not only all day in school, but they're exposed to it all night at home. We see impacts on the immune system. And here we are in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and we're trying to keep everybody healthy. And unfortunately, this constant exposure to Wi-Fi interferes with our normal immune system functioning, not only for the kids, but for all the staff. We are seeing more chronic disease with autoimmunity, with allergies, with autism, with ADHD. And while it's generally not thought of as a causative singular stimulus, it certainly is part of the burden on the camel's back and generally tends to lead towards chronic medical complaints. And we have all these kids who have more and more chronic disease that we are seeing. As far as training that I've taken, there is a lovely environmental health symposium that I took this last year. It was several days of experts in the field. I've taken a course with Nicholas Pinault, who's a expert in the field and had done that several years ago. He has books you can read. There's courses with other experts. And so lots of webinars, lots of training. What is available to the school nurses? Well, there are a number of environmental groups like the Environmental Health Trust that have put together some nice training packages on short, less than the 3 days of seminars that I took. Short, but targeted education on what are the problems, what are the mechanisms, and then how do we identify and how do we mitigate. And so targeting something like that for the school nurses would be good, because parents and school nurses are not aware that when your kid is complaining of headaches or eye strain or can't see at a distance or is anxious or depressed or can't focus, that never crosses anyone's mind. And we need to start making it more of an issue and increase the awareness to say, yes, this is a possible contributor to these kinds of complaints. And how can we lower, honestly, everyone's exposure? There are the Americans with Disabilities Act accommodations, which certainly would work for people who are electrohypersensitive. It's estimated that at least 25% of Americans today have some kind of symptom related to electrohypersensitivity. That's an awful lot of people. And 25% of the kids too. And so how do we accommodate their needs to protect them while continuing their education in an effective way and not making them feel like they're different or separate or ostracized? These are all huge issues that we have. Now, as the diagram that they've put up is showing, kids are actually more sensitive to this wireless radiation than adults. They have smaller bodies, they have thinner skulls, they have more water in their brain, and all of these things increase their sensitivity to this radiation over that of an adult. Questions, comments?
If there's no questions or comments, thank you, Dr. Patty. We're going to transition back to Mary. Mary.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask Doris to give her example with her daughter.
Yes. So back in March of 2019, when children were sent home for virtual learning. Oh, sorry, my video is not on for some reason. Okay. So back in March of 2019, when children were sent home from school for virtual learning, both my children, I had a kindergartner and a fourth grader at the time. And what I began noticing was that when my children were on for their virtual classes and doing the work on the computer, which they previously weren't with me at home, doing primarily all their work on the computer, I noticed that my daughter had a lot of stomach aches, headaches. Both my children had nosebleeds. My son was incredibly irritable, and nothing in our life had changed. So I began researching to figure out what could possibly be causing them the harm. And what I was shocked to find is that there's 30 years worth of research and evidence on the biological effects. And so what I did was we had the school print us out paper, went back to paper and pencil, and I did my best to protect my children by hardwiring. I had wall jacks installed in our home, and we hardwired the devices, and sure enough, the symptoms went away. So when using the computer, when it's hardwired, my children don't have upset stomachs, nosebleeds, headaches, the whole nine. So luckily I've been able to homeschool, but this is a real problem. I mean, I wasn't able to send my children back to school based on the fact that I know, she had been going to the school nurse with stomach aches, and I wasn't called every single time, but she explained to me that this was happening frequently in school. And it makes sense because children are surrounded by Chromebooks that are not hardwired. And so there's multiple devices radiating at them. And so school became not a safe environment for my daughter, knowing that she was having all these upset stomachs, but the nurses weren't aware to let me know. And so therefore, there's an easy fix. Hardwiring is part of the answer, part of the solution, and limiting the time. However, we need nurses to be educated on this, and we need to hardwire, and we need to be educating teachers and children and parents about the harms of this. And I bet there's more than you realize. And in the town hall comments, there was a lot of parents requesting lowered screen time. There was a lot of those suggestions because parents are very frustrated about this. And they're seeing issues at home. I don't know if we want to lead into Anastasia. Anastasia, do you want to talk about the screen time? Because that was in their guidelines as well to address.
Yes, it's not a secret that a big epidemic of screen dependency disorder or screen addiction that we have now. On average in 2016, school-age children were spending 7 hours a day next to the screens. It was before devices were broadly introduced in schools in the United States. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics in 2016 in their policy 138.5 in brackets recommended for children of 5 to 18 years old, no more than 2 hours of screen time a day. It includes all the activities for education and pleasure. In 2017, Journal of International Child Neurology Association published an article, Screen Dependency Disorders, a New Challenge for Child Neurology. It terminates that screen dependency disorder affects communication skills, empathy, creativity, problem-solving abilities, attention span, self-control. Excessive screen time leads to undeveloped motor skills, mood swings, tantrums, and anxiety. Snacking during screen time is a habit of many. That and lack of movement leads to obesity. Too much screen time can affect brain structure and reduce brain function. Withdrawal can lead to depression, aggression, and anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. And of course, the more time children spend on devices, the more they are affected with RF radiation. Looking at a screen for prolonged periods of time causes digital eye strain. Symptoms include blurry vision, dry eyes, headaches, neck and back pain. Screen or laptops and tablets emit blue light. It contains more energy than the warmer colors. High energy blue light can damage retina and cause permanent loss of vision. It also can cause disrupted sleep patterns because it significantly attenuates melatonin production in the brain that causes interference with circadian rhythm and sleep disturbance. At this point, schools in Virginia, instead of helping overcome the addiction, severely contributing to that problem, making kids sicker and and more dependent on screens. We strongly believe that time spent on screen in school has to be reconsidered and greatly reduced. A resource for that can be the EdTech triangle. In respect to screen time, OLED screen devices should have a blue light filter. Sorry, hello, can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Are you done that?
Screen time?
Yep.
Yes, so basically there is an application, FLux, ideal here, the minimize melatonin reduction in users and recommended by a professor from University of College Cork. So I'm here done.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia. So I just want to reiterate that there were comments, and Jenny, if you could go back to the town hall and pull up Laura's comments. Laura Derringer, it's the only one in brown.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's in bold. Yeah, down at the bottom there, right? A small, hold on. So that those comments were put in there: neurological harm and brain function and structural changes association with obesity, sleep deprivation, which Anastasia talked about, the melatonin suppression, hearing loss, and other physical and mental health symptoms connected or strongly associated with pediatric exposure to digital devices and online platforms. Now, the digital device guidelines go one step further in saying using them is actually healthy, which is not really scientifically a consensus on that. So there's basically, misleading information, even false information in these digital device guidelines. And, we're talking about only the RFR coming from a laptop. And Mr. Bowling, you had said, well, you just assume that there's some standard out there and everybody's, adhering to it. That's not the case at all. Nobody, there is no monitoring, there is no enforcing. Nobody knows what the emission levels are. And basically it's the illness is on the school to ensure safety. So your assumption was, totally incorrect, that there's somebody out there, the proverbial they, doing this work. So these comments were submitted and they were, basically overridden as, being dismissed. And a lot of our comments are going to be very similar to these. And when you're in a classroom, you're not just getting emissions from a laptop. There's actually 8 different point sources that are on the premises, and you may or may not be aware of these point sources. Of course, Wi-Fi, but there's smartphones, smart boards, iPads, game boxes, wearables, macro cell towers, small wireless telecommunication facilities, and space-based satellites, which give an elevation of radio frequency radiation. These kids are getting radiated on every single part of their body from multiple point sources and multiple devices within each point source. In a classroom, there can be up to 100 of these if there's 25 to 35 students. That needs management, that needs attention, that needs a plan, that needs to be monitored. That needs, you need to be able to tell a parent, you know, we have certified that this classroom is safe because we're out there and we know what all the wireless emitting devices are in the room and how close they are to the child. The closer the emitting source is to the child, the more vulnerable they become, because it's distance that makes the difference as to whether or not it's safe. So what's immediately in their laptop or in their school bag or in their pocket is going to affect them more than what's outside the classroom. You know, like a tower. It doesn't mean that the tower doesn't affect them, it just affects them differently. And when we look at all these point sources together, it's called an aggregate signal. And there's licensed frequencies and unlicensed frequencies. FCC worries specifically about licensed frequencies from a cell phone or from a tower, but you're in the classroom with these kids and the aggregate has to be looked at. So,
well, as I said, I've got to wrap up here at
Yeah.
10:30 and I'm a couple minutes late to my next meeting, but I would encourage you, thank you for the information. I would encourage you to provide us with feedback, and you can write it and send it directly to Dr. Meg Foley, and it's just meg.foley@doe.virginia.gov. Please do include research citations that can help support any statement that you're making, and we will certainly review it and take a look at it and potentially share it with the committee who developed it as further feedback. And that committee will make decisions about whether or not there are changes made to the document. That's the official process. So please do feel free to go ahead and submit. And thanks so much for your time and all the information that you've provided.
yeah, I just wanted to ask you, would you consider revising the document based on the information that we didn't even touch on the lack of independent peer reviewed studies that were used to, you know, in 3 areas that weren't, you know, addressed. So would you be willing to, you know, revise the document, say within the next 2 months?
As I said, please do provide your feedback and we'll take a look at it.
Would you be able to consider us as an informational source to help you do that?
I haven't seen the information, so I can't really determine exactly. I need information about your organization. I need information about the research behind some of your claims. And I'm not saying that they're incorrect or wrong or anything like that. What I'm saying is that I just don't have the information in front of me to review. So it's hard to make a determination at this point.
But yeah, we'll supply that. I've actually done a research paper and used information from the UK on a Professor Butler, who had one of the best articles I've seen about the impacts, talking about even the industry themselves, talking about the impacts that are going to happen to them due to the litigious year that we've had. You know,
and multiple sources will certainly help. So thanks so much for your time. Thank you for providing this information. It's very helpful.
You know, I appreciate your time, everybody. I know it's a very steep learning curve, so we're here to help and we'd like to be relied upon.
Mr. Bowling's going to drop off, and Meg, if you could stay on for just a couple more minutes, that would be great.
I think we're just going to go ahead and wrap. All we can do at this point is please do send us your feedback and we'll certainly review it. So thank you.
Okay, well then, the chances of this happening are, what would you say after we provide all?
I have not seen any of the information, so I need to have the information before any kind of statement like that can be made. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, all right. We look forward to talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.